Hey guys, welcome to Spiritual Healthcare Day 23. Of course, it is also Easter Sunday, so happy Easter Sunday to everybody. Hello. As you can see, I'm like ready for Easter now. I'm ready for Easter. My little ode to Bob's Burgers as well. For those of you guys who watch the show, it is, as I say, it's Easter. This is crazy. This is, of course, the first Easter that we're spending kind of indoors and away from people and away from family and things like that. Hopefully, you guys are doing really well. As you can see, I'm like, I'm all set. I'm all set. For those of you guys who watch Bob's Burgers, you'll get the ears, but I had to. It's Easter today, and not only is it Easter today, we are going to be in sort of ode to Easter. We're going to be talking about animals and animal communication, and we got a great question about it, as well as we're going to talk about a little bit about the right side versus the left side of the brain, and kind of what we're tapping into when we're doing a job that's more one way than another. So there's lots that we're going to discuss today. Hopefully you guys you probably have some animal stories yourselves. Happy Easter to all of you. This is great. It's so nice to see everybody logging in. My friend Mark says that he hopes that my snake Galen does not mistake me for breakfast. The great thing about Galen is that he just, he only eats in a certain place, so I think I'll be fine. No, he's good. He loves Easter. He has I sent him on a couple of Easter egg hunts a number of years ago, and now he thinks I'm ridiculous and silly. But what can you do? He's a python, but he's turning 16, so he doesn't care anymore. So happy Easter to everybody watching. As I say, today is going to be really fun. We're going to talk about animals. We're going to talk about their ability to just perceive the world in a different way. And I'm excited about this topic because it's so neat. I mean, I love animals. I've had animals my whole life. I love reptiles specifically. They're just incredible. And yeah, so we got lots to chat about this afternoon. I want to get right into it. Hello, everybody logging in. Happy Easter. So great. I want to get right into it because Jan's question that she sent in a little while ago, and I love this. She's asking, animal communication, does it come differently for some than others? Like my son, he hears sentences. I can sometimes hear that, but times it's silent and I feel things, but nothing is super clear for me. So animal communication, you guys, I love this. I love this topic because there is so much. Good morning, Shadow. And thank you. You can thank Bob's Burgers for the ears. They're Louie's ears. Anybody who has not seen that show, by the way, just watch it and prepare to laugh your ass off. It's such a great and brilliantly written show. So I want to talk about that side of animal communication because there has been tons of animal research and investigation into animals' psi abilities and ESP abilities and all sorts of things like that. And I definitely want to get into that this afternoon. A lot of the most significant connections that have been, of course, talked about with animals and things like that have, of course, come from pet owners, right? Probably a bunch of you guys have had some interesting experiences with your animals, feeling like, you're feeling something and they immediately pick up on that energy, or, it seems like they read your mind sometimes. And we've all had those really unique experiences, and we see this coming up, of course, in nature and stuff as well, where animals seem to be able to communicate thoughts and things like that through really, really long distances. There was an incident a number of years ago in Africa where a reserve worker who had just loved the elephants and researched the elephants and things like that, and he ended up passing away. And the word kind of got out to the elephants, and there were elephants that came from miles and miles and miles away who were nowhere near where this fellow passed away, and they came and they showed up at his funeral, and it was a mystery as to how this happened. Like, what in the heck is going on? So it's a fascinating phenomenon, and we can take it back through history to the work of J.B. Rhine at Duke University. So the Rhine Institute, Research Institute, you guys, is probably one of the most unique and I think prestigious study programs in the world. J.B. Rhine in the 1930s, he was really concerned more with ESP in people, but they carried out extensive surveys with psychic behavior in animals too. So things like reacting to impeding danger of the animal or their people, reaction to the death of the owner, like in the case of the elephant where they were nowhere near, but yet they seem to know what's going on. Anticipation of their return, of like somebody's return home. For those of you guys who have dogs, you've probably, if you've had somebody stay at your house with your dog, the dog seems to know you're coming in the door, like, 10-20 minutes before you show up. Homing, trailing, and all sorts of things like that. So by 1969, there was significant reports of precognition in mice, for instance, which is really interesting too. So there's a ton of information and research about this, and Rupert Sheldrake, who is I'm a huge Sheldrake fan. His research has been fantastic, and he dove into the idea of animal behaviors to support a theory that he had called morphic resonance. Okay, so morphic resonance is really interesting. It's when animals seem to retain memories from the rest of their population or a generation prior. So it's kind of like going back to what we were talking about a number of days ago, where we discussed the idea that epigenetics, trauma or experiences in our past might actually influence our DNA. So his idea was the idea that we could have animals could have sort of these collective thoughts that could get passed down throughout the animal's history. Now, the noted skeptic, Richard Wiseman, he tried to repeat the same result, and he claimed that he got very different results. He said that there was nothing. Sheldrake, he found that there was significant a significant number to start looking at, that it was beyond odds, that this was just random chance. And Sheldrake then argued that Wiseman's results were wrong. He basically said, look, you guys are, you basically got the same results I did, and you're interpreting them differently. So there's lots of history in parapsychology going back into the idea of animal research and whatnot. But I think we have to remember, apart from all of that, that animals we perceive our world so much differently than they do. And it's something that we have to keep in mind. And not only with animals, but with each other also. When sometimes you'll maybe get into an argument or something like that where, the person sees a color as blue, and then they turn around, or the next person will see that color as something completely different, or purple, or something like that. We all remember the dress experiment with the online dress experiment, where people were seeing the dress as one color and then another color, and there was a big argument about it. We have to remember that just because people are perceiving our world a little bit differently doesn't mean it's wrong. And we can look to animals for this example. Just to give you guys an idea about this, using my own snake Galen, he's like a little superhero. I mean, this little guy, he can not only taste, smell, he can see heat, because he can see in both the UV to the infrared spectrum. He's got so many different abilities, and he perceives things on a completely another level than what we could ever imagine, right? So, is his perception of the world wrong? Well, no, of course it's not wrong. He's just perceiving more of it. The human experience, when we look out into the world with the senses that we have, it's so minimal compared to the expansive experience that a lot of the animals are having. One of the reasons for this, apart from the fact that, they are kind of superheroes, dogs have those amazing noses and things like that, but they also have a far better time and an easier time just being still. They're just in the moment. They live in the moment. They're not looking to the future all the time. They're not, digging up their past memories most of the time. They're in the moment. And that is so unbelievably key for not only our own peace of mind, but I think why animals can then turn around and focus. They can experience things around them in a different way, and it opens them up, in my opinion, to being a bit more perceptive of the little subtleties and, maybe some paranormal experiences that you and I would normally miss, right? So their ability to be able to do that, to be still, to be in the moment, is one of the reasons why we find them as people just so zen, right? I mean, there's nothing better. I think most people will agree with this. There's nothing better than, having maybe a hard day or something like that, and whatever your animal is start snuggling up to you or greets you when you come home, or wants to go play, and within a really short amount of time they kind of suck you into that well-being and that momentum, right? And all of a sudden, you're starting to feel better, and all sorts of things. We see a great connection with people and animals, specifically when we're dealing with even medical things and medical emergencies. They seem to know ahead of time things like identifying illnesses, being able to, or smelling illnesses on occasion is what they're theorizing in some cases. But being able to, sense changes in electromagnetics, detecting things like epilepsy and stuff like that, but just being so tuned in to not only their people, but to themselves, and they pay attention to themselves as well. And I think that is so key. It's something that people don't do. I used to teach this one class down in the Edmonton River Valley, and it was always so interesting because I would get people using things like dowsing rods and stuff like that because it got them to still their minds. It got them to pay attention and focus. And as they would be, walking in a circle with these dowsing rods, and just focusing their attention, quieting their minds, what was so interesting was that the kids, strangely enough, had an easier time doing this than the adults. They just had an easier time because they weren't drudging up all that stuff in their head. They were just able to be at peace, and they were getting things working because, of course, dowsing rods, if those of you guys who don't know dowsing rods, basically all they are, you can make them out of little pieces of metal, but sometimes it's called divining or witching. And your sympathetic nervous system is what makes these dowsing rods actually turn and move. It's nothing supernatural, really. But it's our own instincts and our own sympathetic nervous system that causes these dowsing rods to turn. So it's very interesting. But in order to get them to work, you really do have to focus. You have to quiet up here. And it's usually kids and animals that are able to get themselves just into that state of mind a little bit easier, because we're not just, as I say, we're not drugging everything up and dragging stuff from our past into it. So there's, as I say, large history with animals in psi research. It's so cool. It's just so much fun to be able to dig into it. My little guy Galen has had some really cool experiences. My birth dad, he passed away a number of years ago, and I'm pretty sure that he comes and visits every once in a while because there is some sort of spirit that seems to show up at my place about every 6 months, pops in about every 6 months or so, and Galen ends up seeing him. He sees him before I never see him. But Galen always reacts, and he has this little greeting that he does when he sees somebody he really loves and he knows, and he has this little greeting, and he'll perk up and he'll look around and he'll go over to whoever this is, and he'll do his little greeting, and he'll spend about 15-20 minutes interacting with someone, and after a little while, he seems to say goodbye to them and they leave. But it is the coolest thing to watch, and it's the moments like that you kind of wish that you had the same perceptive ability. It's pretty neat. So that's really neat. So I'm pretty sure I know who it is. So I think it's pretty cool. But those of you guys who've had dogs and cats and things like that react to things in the room and all sorts of things. I mean, people report it all the time. All the time. So actually, another quick story before I move on to the next question. This is kind of cool. So years ago, when I still had a cat, who ended up, he passed away, but when I still had a cat, we would see a second cat that would wander around our house. So, and he was white. He was perfectly white. And people would come over and mistake him for our cat, well, I guess it was our cat, but we would mistake him for our cat, and we ended up nicknaming him Horatio, and he would wander around the house and whatnot, but you'd only see pieces of him. You'd see like a tail and ears, or you'd see like a butt go around a corner or something like that. It was really cool. It was super fun. And when our cat passed away, the spirit cat, whatever it was, disappeared as well, and we've not seen him since. So it's really interesting. The animal stories are so cool. But yeah, we had to go into that today because, you know, it's Easter and I'm wearing bunny ears. So, you know, made sense. So the next question comes from Victoria, and I love this. I have a very left brain job, she says. I found that when I'm really concentrating on my work, the right side kind of floats around, creates solutions to issues that I'm having. Same thing when I sleep. I wake up with solutions. Is the right side tapping into the collective? Love this question. This is so cool because so much when it comes to solutions and being able to collect into or connect into some of that, you know, I guess infinite knowledge in a way, really does come not necessarily from, I would say, the left or the right side, but I think it's that state of being when you're just in that non-resistant focused state. Like we hear it from athletes, right? Athletes are, you know, they always talk about being in the zone. Artists like Beethoven and Bach and Mozart, they all talked about the same feeling of this sort of trance state. And the people that were around individuals like Beethoven at the time, you know, they would go over and, you know, talk to them or try to get their attention when they were composing, and you just couldn't. Like they were just so honed in and focused, but everything at that point would just flow. I've got, you know, I'm so blessed to have so many artists and things like that in my life, and all of them report the same thing. It's like as soon as they get into that flow of whatever it is, then stuff starts to just show up. In psi research, we see the most accounts of things like people seeing apparitions, having paranormal experiences, all sorts of things like that when they're kind of in that non-resistant state. And it can be something really simple and stupid, like watching TV or doing the dishes, something, or vacuuming, anything that's kind of monotonous where your brain kind of just clicks off, right? You know, and that, or as I say, that hyper focus into something that you're doing. It's so interesting for me if I'm doing, because I do a lot of fire arts and fire eating and stuff like that. And when I get into that zone, for sure is when I'm working with fire, because I go into this sort of meditative, what they call the flow state in the flow arts. And you end up just letting your mind go. You get into that place of non-resistance. And I think it allows that connection to just heighten as much as it possibly can. You're not putting blocks in the way. I think that state of being really is probably one of the most natural states of being that we can be in, rather than, you know, trying to think our way through things sometimes. Thinking is great, but thinking is a tool. Right? It's not something where it has to dominate our brain, dominate our thinking or our thoughts and our processing. Thinking is an amazing tool, but sometimes we can overthink, right? Everybody's had that, and then all of a sudden, you know, we're overthinking and we're getting anxiety and all of that. So anything that we can do to get into that flow state really begins to to allow us these answers to come through and allow us this connection. And as I say, it usually allows for some of the most interesting paranormal stuff as well. I've gotten a lot of questions over the years about people saying, you know, I've lost a loved one and I'm trying and trying and trying to get a hold of them. And, you know, I just can't, and I don't know why. You know, my friend who doesn't care at all had this, you know, experience with them, and I haven't had that experience with them, and what the heck? And oftentimes, though, this is the reason why, is because that drive and that you know, constant overthinking and that wanting kind of ends up blocking that connection. So the person who, you know, maybe doesn't care as much, who is in a state of less resistance about it, all of a sudden will have that experience, and it usually ticks the other person right off, because they think, well, why wasn't I chosen? Why wasn't I the person who got the visit? And honestly, it's not personal, but you got to get in the state of allowing. You got to get into that state of flow in order to allow the experience to happen, rather than be forcing or chasing it to happen. And yeah, so that is, it's so important to touch on that. And yeah, get into the flow state. The answers show up. The answers show up. It's really cool. Yeah, one of these days, Shadow says, so cool you eat fire. One of these days on Spiritual Healthcare, I will eat some fire for you guys. I will. We will do I will do the lesson for you that I give my students in person, about paradigms, shifting paradigms, and I teach that shifting paradigms with fire and stuff like that. So I will do that for you guys one of these days, because it's really fun. It's really fun. It's crazy. I have a weird job. Okay. Anyway, I've got a great reading for you guys today. I think it's super topical, and it's quite short. But I really loved this because it pertains to exactly what we just talked about. And it's from Eckhart Tolle, Oneness with All Life. This is a really great book. If you guys want the full version of this, these are like snippets out of another book of his called A New Earth. And A New Earth is like, it's just a game changer book. It really is. It's super good. And Oneness with All Life is fantastic too. And it's kind of like a little breakdown of important parts of A New Earth. So check this out. Don't seek happiness. If you seek it, you won't find it, because seeking is the antithesis of happiness. Happiness is ever elusive, but freedom from unhappiness is attainable now, by facing what is rather than making up stories about it. Unhappiness covers up your natural state of well-being and inner peace, the source of true happiness. So I love this. I love this quote because it really talks to the idea of not only thinking about, you know, what it is that we want, but it's an aspect of creation. It's an aspect of creating our reality. It's an aspect of I think even goal setting and things like that that we don't talk about. And you know, it's easy to get wrapped up in the thought of, you know, well, I've just got to be super positive all the time, or I've just got to you know, I have to just ignore those negative feelings. And that's really one of the worst things that you can do, because we're kind of like a GPS system, right? Like, the universe doesn't care about where we've been. It cares about where we are, and it wants to get us to where we want to be, which is whatever that thing is that we've set into motion. And in order to do that, sometimes we've got to sort of take a step back, sit and acknowledge what is, make peace with what is, and then start to move forward with, you know, whatever techniques or tools or positive emotion it's going to take for you to heal that, make peace with that, and move to the next step. But you know, people get wrapped up in this idea sometimes that it's all about, you know, we just have to, you know, numb that out and just, you know, be positive 100% of the time. And it's just not realistic. You know, our negative emotion is here for a reason. It's here to tell us, wait a minute, something's not off. It's just off. Something something I tell my clients all the time with negative entities and things like that, again, is the idea that, these guys, they're indicators. If you're on that same frequency with something that's super negative, it's telling you something. It's telling you something's off. The universe is a mirror. And in order for us to allow our natural state of being and allow that joy and happiness, we've got to pay attention to what is. We got to sit with it. We got to heal it, feel it, and then move through it. And that's really the work, because then we find that peace and that inner peace, and that peace is really where that joy starts fundamentally. So I think it's super important. So I wanted to give you guys a cool process today as well. I'm so glad you guys are still taking me seriously, my bunny ears. I really am. Like, it means a lot. It means a lot. I feel like coming out with some sort of line from Bob's Burgers or something like that. But so I wanted to give you guys a cool process. And I'm not a huge fan of connecting in with or relying on objects or certain things to do that, any sort of like emotional work or things like that, because I really do think it starts from you. And when you start misidentifying what the role of objects are, then it becomes a bit of a problem. But there is a way to do it that I really love, and I use myself, so that's why I'm passing it on to you guys, is finding something significant that represents the thing that you are either working towards, or something that's just sort of a subtle reminder of what it is you are aiming for. It keeps you centered, keeps you goal oriented. And I'll give you an example of this. Steve Harvey, when he was regularly, I can't remember which one of his shows that he was working on at the time. But anyway, this was a number of years ago, and he really wanted the same ratings as Oprah. It was a big goal for him. He thought if he could get his show up to that next level of ratings, man, it was a bucket list thing for him. It was really cool. So what he did was he had the ratings numbers that he wanted actually embroidered in his pant cuffs. He actually would embroider. He'd have the tailor his pants and then embroider them in the pant cuff underneath. So it was constantly in his vision. Every time he got dressed in the morning, it was just subtly there. It's really, really cool. So I have a bracelet that pertains to a story that I heard on the Abraham Hicks Masterclass. And I really loved it, and it had to do with whales. And I've actually got a bracelet, and I'm not wearing it right now, but I've got a bracelet that I actually sewed a little charm of a whale's tail into it. And the sentence that they had that impacted me was, that whale is in the ocean. And it doesn't matter how big that goal is, how big whatever it is that you want, that whale is in the ocean, is your belief in there with it. And I loved that so much that I ended up, as I had this bracelet, and I ended up sewing this little whale tail onto it. So every time I think about it, or every time I look at the whale tail, it reminds me, check in, check how you're feeling. Are you on track to pushing towards, what it is you want, or allowing what it is that you want? So it's something that you guys can kind of play with, and it's going to be different again for everybody, right? Because it depends on what it is for you. It's going to be, whatever is significant in your world that you can use as that little reminder. Like, wait a minute, no, if I'm feeling off, I look at that whale tail and bam, it's like, is my belief in there with that, in the ocean with that whale? Well, we'll see. So, so yeah, it's great. So give that a try, you guys. It's really cool. I also want to give you guys a really fun to do for today, because I didn't want to make anything too serious, because I'm being so serious. I wanted to pass on a really great website. So Hogwarts, for those of you guys who are Harry Potter fans, because I love Harry Potter. Galen loves Harry Potter too. He's read all the books. I've read to him for hours. And they have decided that they are going to do online free Hogwarts lessons. Hogwarts classes. So you can actually go and take some of the Hogwarts lessons and whatnot with the teachers and play around with it. It's really cool. It's super fun. So I'm gonna leave the link up for you guys to mess around with that. For those of you who have kids, you guys are gonna love it. But it's for adults and stuff too. It's really neat. So I wanted to give you guys something fun to play with today. So yeah, go to Hogwarts, get on your wizard stuff. You know, be alchemists for the day. It's so much fun. So that being said, for those of you guys who are new, again, I wanted to let you know that all of the spiritual healthcare classes are again on YouTube and on entityseeker.ca. Okay, so entityseeker.ca, youtube.com/entityseeker. All of the spiritual healthcare classes are getting uploaded there. So if you've missed one or you want to go back on something, please go and check those out, because they're all available. And also, April the 18th, for all of the Americans out there, this is big news. April the 18th, Paranormal 911 Season 2 will be debuting on Travel Channel. Finally, for you guys, we've had it in Canada now for a little while, but Paranormal 911 Season 2 will be on, and of course, I'm there on it. Richard Eastep is there, really good friend of mine. He is working his butt off, you guys, right now on the front lines of this COVID-19 thing. He is an EMT. And we can't thank him enough for his service, because he has been not only leading the EMT teams in Boulder, Colorado, and teaching and stuff like that, but he's also been on the front lines, and he's out there with the ambulances. So you know, just so much love to Richard Eastep, because he is working his ass off to make sure everybody gets the message to stay home, stay safe, don't go out for like Easter dinner and stuff tonight, just stay put. So I just wanted to reaffirm what Richard has been going on and on about, because he's watching this whole thing like right from the front lines. So thank you so much, Richard, for everything you guys are doing, and all the first responders out there. Man, we just couldn't be doing this without you guys. So thank you so much. So that being said, guys, we got to do our affirmations, because we got to do it. We got to send ourselves off into the day with the right energy. So here we go. Take a breath. It is natural for my body to be well. Even if I don't know what to do in order to get better, my body does. I have trillions of cells with individual consciousness, and they know how to achieve individual balance. When this condition began, I didn't know what I know now. I don't need to understand the cause of this illness. I only have to gently, eventually release this illness. It doesn't matter how it got started, because it's reversing its course right now. And there's no hurry about any of this. My body knows what to do, and well-being is natural to me. My inner being is intricately aware of my physical body, and my cells are asking for what they need in order to thrive, and Source is answering those requests. I'm in very good hands. My only work is to relax and breathe, and I can do that easily. Everyone take a breath. I hope everybody has an amazing Easter Sunday. Again, make sure you guys stay home, stay safe. We've got a really good show tomorrow. We're going to be talking a special request. One of you guys sent in a really powerful question about grief and the different kinds of grief and how to move through that. So we're going to be talking not only about grief in regards to the paranormal and losing a loved one, but also what that looks like when we're grieving things like our job, a way of life, what normal was and is going to be. So tomorrow's show is going to be really great. Please don't miss it. It's going to be awesome. if you guys have questions around this subject as well, please send it in, because as I say, tomorrow we're going to be tackling this, and it's going to be really great. There's going to be awesome discussion around just the idea of what we do, how to find the joy in grief. How do we do that? So we're going to do that tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. Mountain Time, right here on Spiritual Healthcare. Thank you guys so much again. See you soon.